here today. My name is Nora Moraga Lui, and I am the manager for conflict resolution and peace at Conservation International. I'm very happy that you've decided to participate in this session, which we've titled Forest Management, Conflict and Peace Building, Research, Practice, and Policy for the Future. And that is a very broad title. But before I say a little bit more about the session, I would like to note a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, I'll ask one of our colleagues who are helping to run this session to share this conference's code of conduct in the chat for everyone to take a look at. And please keep this in mind for this session and any other sessions that you will participate in. Now, second, I'd like to share a little bit about the Envision format for this discussion session that we're in. I'm going to start us off with a short introduction and framing, and soon after, I promise, our featured discussants will introduce themselves. Then we're going to make our way through a short series of questions, most of which are in the event description, and we can also post the event description in the chat if you want to take a look at some of those questions ahead of the conversation. So the featured discussants who are here with us today, who will introduce themselves, they're going to start us off with a couple of reflections on those questions. But that said, we really encourage our colleagues who have joined via Zoom to raise their hands if they would like to say something or ask a question. And of course, type out in the chat throughout the entire session if you'd like to, your questions, comments, reflections, right? There's also going to be probably some time at the end for more lively discussion with our participants. So, you can also wait until then if you would prefer. Now, let me start by trying to share my screen so that we can get to know our audience a little bit better. One moment. Okay, I'm going to try this. Can someone let me know if they can see my screen here?
Yes.
Wonderful. And hopefully it's still visible to everybody. So what you all see here may be familiar to some of you. This is called a Mentimeter. I would love it if you all have access to another device, or if you can just open another tab in your computer to visit the site www.menti.com and use the code 863-42769. Now, I was going to paste that information in for you in the chat, but I don't see the chat while I'm sharing my screen, so maybe one of our colleagues can actually do that. Let me see. Oh, there it is. There we go. I got it. All right. And you should have a question that opens up. If someone can let me know, there we go. If they can't see the question, that's fine, but it looks like it's working. So I encourage you all to share with us a little bit about your disciplinary background or your field. So far, we only have one academic, and I know that's not reflective of who's here because I recognize some of your names. So let's see. Wonderful. I'll give you all just a few more seconds. Maybe I'll add mine as well. Great. Well, this is good. So we're getting a diversity here. I'm really encouraged to see how I think different maybe our approaches will be to this conversation, given the sort of diverse background that we have here. So we have people ranging from working in the humanitarian sector, from mediators to conservationists, whether it's a conservation scientist or a practitioner, anthropologists, really exciting to see that. And represented in our own discussant group, we have people from the agricultural sector, from the law and human rights. So I'm really happy to see this great variety here of backgrounds. I'm going to click to the next slide, I hope. I'm not sure. And you're welcome using that same link. If you kept the window open, it should automatically refresh. You can type in where you're joining us from. And please feel free to be general or very specific. And as expected, I see already a lot of great places all over the world, including Washington, D.C. That's where I'm currently based. And I know our discussants are And I think right now you all are in Indonesia, Nigeria, and Liberia, right? Great. Well, thank you all for filling this out. This is useful for us as, moderator and discussants to just kind of get to know who's out there. Hopefully all of you all will be able to share a bit about your experience as well, and some of your priorities and ideas for the future from those perspectives that you all have. Great. So I'm gonna, I just stopped sharing my screen, and now it's finally time for us to get ready for today's session. And I'm gonna share a little bit about the sort of reason for why we decided to convene this group. So this conversation is an idea that came from the Environmental Peacebuilding Association's Forest Interest Group, which I've been lucky to be a part of for a couple of years. And I know Facunle is also a member. He's one of our featured discussants today. And I think Andiko may be a recent new member, another discussant we have. So this is a small but mighty group, I think, and something that I know we had reflected on that we'd like to do better is making sure that we're consistently engaging with the breadth of practice and research areas and policy areas related to the forest conflict and peace nexus beyond just the people who are in our group. We want to do more outreach, engagement, get to know, who else is out there. So along with my colleagues Usaini Kalilu, who you may have met in previous sessions for this conference, and Bernd Unger, who I think may be with us today, we came up with a list of questions, and these are pretty broad questions, as you can see. So the three of us work on issues including, natural resources as an entry point for dialogue, dispute resolution, tree planting efforts for peace building and livelihoods, storytelling about forests, and conflict sensitivity and conservation. So we recognize, the three of us from the interest group, that this session topic is broad and that the questions we pose can go in any direction for our discussants and for our audience members. But our objectives for this roundtable, I think, are clear, and I'll share those now. We would like to first highlight the broad range of experiences or perspectives on the forest conflict peace nexus area. We would like to reflect on successes and lessons learned from a variety of scales, geographies, and sectors, related to forests and peace building, the impact of conflict on forests, and about how forest management can be done better or in a way that allows both the ecological and sociocultural landscape to flourish. And finally, we'd like to share some ideas for where we would like our research, policy, or practice in these areas to go in the near future. Again, huge questions. We're not going to answer every aspect of it, but I hope this will be an interesting discussion. With that, I am excited to finally let our esteemed discussants introduce themselves. So they're going to share a bit about, where they work, what they currently do, and anything else about their background that they like. And I think the order we'll use is we'll start with Mahawa Komala, then we'll move to Andiko Mankayo, and finally we'll hear from Facunle Aremu. So Mahawa, if you'd like to take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, my video is gonna be off because of the network. My name is Mahawa Komala. I'm from Liberia, West Africa. I am a Senator Mandela Washington Fellow, and I currently work with Everyday Gandhis in Liberia. Everyday Gandhis is an international peace building organization, and our primary focus is on peace building through traditional storytelling, respect for traditional culture, and restore nature. Well, in 2015, our team it necessary to engage in environmental protection and ecological restoration activities when the impacts of deforestation, like tropical storm, food shortage, water shortage, and loss of biological diversity, it became of concern to us. So since then, we have engaged in series of reforestation and afforestation programs in Vonjama. Vonjama is in northern Liberia. So we have had workshops with farmers in affected areas in order to raise awareness about the impacts and threats of global warming and climate change. So we have been working with communities on preserving part of their forests interplanting in these forest areas, and as well as providing technical knowledge on how to build their own tree nurseries, because we have a lot of reforestation program and it requires that they have a nurseries on their farms in their communities. So we encourage them to keep their forests even without our support. Over these years, we have planted thousands of fruit trees in affected communities, and we have also planted forest trees in our reserve forest. Every Ghana has a reserve forest in Punjama, which is strictly for conservation and community use. With that said, my experience with working with farmers has motivated me to concentrate on the maintenance and continual availability of forest resources so that they can benefit from it within a longer period. Because conserving forests also helps improve the environment and the community of those who live around there. So communities' participation is important in environmental peace building, especially when it comes to forest management. Conflict arises when a group of people feel left out and when they are not part of discussion concerning their forest. So as such, community rights must be respected and considered in all forest conservation and management agreements in order to promote peace and stability in forested communities. So it's an honor to be on this panel and I'm truly grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mahawa. That's a really wonderful introduction. I just want to remind our colleagues who are joining as participants today, if you hear anything that our colleagues say when they introduce themselves, feel free to ask follow-up questions so that they can try and incorporate those questions into their future answers. And now I'd like to turn it over to Andiko Mankayo, who will introduce himself as well.
Hello, good evening from Indonesia. My name Andiko. I would like to say sorry. I should cut my video because I have problem about bandwidth. Yeah. Formally, currently I am sustainability and human rights lawyer from Indonesia. In that moment, I try to develop one law office that provide multidisciplinary service for complete natural resources and conflict, land conflict in Indonesia. I already working on issue on conflict more than 20 years, yeah, related with forestry, yeah, including the forestry. And the last time I was become head of National Forestry Council in Indonesia. And today, I still working to develop the methodology to resolve the land conflict and natural resources conflict in Indonesia among company and community and government or many parties. And we try to make some methodology and try to implement this methodology and to make a better and the conflict resolution process in Indonesia. And especially for sustainability issue, I try to give some lawyering service based on multidisciplinary perspective, because if we're talking about the sustainability and conflict, we're talking about many aspects, not only talking about the law, but we're talking about the social standard, human rights standard, and environment standard. I living in Batam in the front of Singapore, and close from Sumatra and 1 hour from Jakarta. And other side, I am consultant in a few projects related with the forestry, like forest program from KfW from Germany. Pak Ben attend in this meeting. Pak Ben, one of my project coordinator from Central Sulawesi. We try to resolve the conflict in forestry here. Thank you.
Really impressive career, Andiko. We're really happy that you're here with us, sharing from your perspective and your many expertise. Fakunle, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon from Nigeria. My name is Aremu Fakunle John. My background is in agricultural economics. I formerly work with the Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria, where we did a lot of research on forest-related issues and the economic aspect of forestry. For instance, what are the value additions that can be added to products, non-timber forest products from the that we find in our immediate environment, and how can the forest communities, dwellers, can benefit from it. Then work for World Bank to see how we can improve the livelihood of women group, especially women group, using the agricultural products from the forestry. Currently, I'm the head of the Sedoria Multiventures. It's a private sector that is using agribusiness as a tool to prevent conflict and to address conflict-related issues. We prevent conflict through economic development of people, and we address and solve the conflict through livelihood development using agriculture. And we found out that in an environment where people are poor, the economic situation is down, there is high tendency for conflict-related issue to rise. But when they are able to make the best use of the resources in their environment, protect it, and turn it to good, then the peace building is ensured. I'm very happy to be here with you and to discuss around forest issue. Thank you.
Amazing. Fakunle, you very succinctly almost answered our next question. So thank you so much for sharing your background, all of you. We already have some insights into this, but I was wondering if you might like to share with us again a summary of how in your work forest management is connected to or impacted by conflict dynamics or peace building. And I, again, will open the floor first to our discussants, and then, you are all welcome to make comments or ask questions in the chat as well, or raise your hands. I'm going to start with Andiko because his microphone is unmuted. Andiko, would you like to go ahead and start us off?
I am first?
Yes,
Okay.
if possible. Thank you.
Maybe I would like to share location first. Yeah, maybe not much people hear about where is Indonesia. Okay. Do you know Bali? Bali only small island within Indonesia area. Indonesia in Southeast Asia, in the south of Malaysia. Many foreigner, West people only know from the Europe to Malaysia, yeah. But Indonesia has the border, direct border with Malaysia, yeah. Nah, this is Indonesia. We have 5,000 big island and 5 big island and 1,000 small island. And we have, no, I don't know number. Yeah, we have big forest, especially in Borneo, yeah, Kalimantan, and Papua. Maybe you hear something about Papua, yeah. Nah, when Indonesian independent, maybe 60 years ago, yeah, we got one big problem. Nah, this is like the colonial system. The Dutch colonial already established one principle of law in Indonesia. The law talking about if any land without the right, yeah, people, this is owned by state, including the forest. And this is the problem, yeah. And after Indonesian independent, Indonesian government try to establish the name of state forest area. If you go to Indonesia, you will be met with two kind of meaning of state of forest. The first, forest related with the ecological situation. This is like the many trees, some kind of like that. And second, you can meet with the political forest. The political forest coming from the government direction. Even in the field doesn't have trees again. Nah, this is the situation in Indonesia. And maybe more half area from the land in Indonesia under this state forest area status, low status, yeah. But in the field, we can meet with the hundreds of villages already established from long time ago, or before government make some decision about the state forest area. What is the risk if you live within the state forest area? You cannot get the opportunity to develop something because your land quote unquote illegal. You live in illegal situation within the state forest area. You need some more license for your life, yeah, to save your life within the state forest area. From this situation, the conflict, tenure conflict, becoming more big, because the community still growing up or activity in the ground and developing some garden, some plantation, for example, palm oil plantation, yeah. Nah, from community perspective, the area owned by the community because he got the ownership from his customary law, some kind of like that, yeah. But from the government side, maybe the community living under the illegal situation because the community doesn't have a license from government. And since maybe 20 years ago, the Indonesian citizen, yeah, more big, yeah, and he need more land. And that moment, the encourager was coming from state forest area, yeah, because the community tried to taking some opportunity for economic. Nah, the tenure problem not only coming from indigenous people only, yeah, but the second situation, the tenure conflict coming from the urban people, yeah. He many people coming to the forest area to develop some plantation, for example, palm oil or coffee plantation like that. Yeah, and many moment my government try to resolve this problem with the law enforcement, but in that moment the community many issue coming related with the human right conflict, some kind of like that. Yeah, social conflict, and through the law enforcement. Yeah, and since 20 years since Indonesian Reformation, my government tried to discuss about maybe the conflict in the forest area cannot resolve only with law enforcement only. We should talking about the peace building here, and we should process the conflict resolution methodology to resolve the conflict, tenure conflict among the indigenous people and government in protected area, for example, or urban people in the company area. Because why the conflict coming? Yeah, Indonesian has so big state forest area and not enough personnel government to protect this area. And in the physical, in the ground, we look like with the open access area. There is no guard here and not enough police, some kind of like that. And the community try to develop his economic prosperity. And in this situation, similar situation, the indigenous people still exist and doesn't have some recognition, the strong recognition. And Indonesian try to develop some methodology to resolve this conflict. And Indonesian government, especially the forestry department, Minister of Forestry, agree about we should resolve the tenure conflict with the resolution, conflict resolution process. For example, ADR, alternative dispute.
Andiko,
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was wondering if we could actually hear more about those methodologies in our next question, which is about the frameworks and approaches. Is that all right?
Okay, stop. I stop now. Okay.
No, and feel free to add more later.
Maybe I want to underline one sentence. Yeah. What is the connection among forestry, management, and conflict? Yeah, in Indonesia, the key point is there is the big of tenure conflict in the ground of Indonesia. Thank you. This.
It's incredibly clear, and that's a really good contextual picture that you've painted, Andiko. It's amazing to see in this case the sort of colonial legacy and the role of different governments in the past. And it seems that in this case, obviously, forests and land are inextricably linked. I guess that's the case almost everywhere. But there's a very complex legal situation with customary or traditional norms and laws and frameworks, and then also the sort of imposed overlay. And I think hopefully we'll get into a bit more how you have approached addressing those many stakeholders and issues through conflict resolution. Thank you so much again. And now I'd like to see if Mahawa has anything to contribute. Again, the question is, how is conflict or peace related to forest management in the context where you work? I think we've already heard a little bit about Mahawa's context, but would you like to add anything else?
Yes, thank you. In Liberia, like we hold approximately 42% of the upper Guinea forest, and then we have vast forests in Liberia, but then we are gradually losing forest area because of our own activities. The forests we have in Liberia, the forest is high in biological diversity. The forest got some commercial and conservation values. And the forest sector is an important source of livelihood and employment for those who live around the forest area. So despite this important in the contribution of forests, forests contribute to the national economy because we have our FDA, the Forestry Development Authority. They generate a lot of revenue from the forest area. So now, with all these values, we realize that the management and the management of these forests is an issue. People in these rural communities who are the main actors of forest conservation are sometimes not included in conservation agreements and management agreements. So in that, it sometimes leads to conflict like peace building because the community believe that they have their right and you need access to these things. So if you have concessionaires coming in and then they need permit to log in a particular forest, you cannot give permit without the consultation of the community. So now community's participation comes in. So they feel that they have right to these things and they should be considered in every aspect. And then, like I said earlier, rural communities depend on forest for livelihood. And this is really shrinking because of the rise in deforestation. And then lack of training, lack of access to information, lack of resources like financial resources and opportunities for discussion, and lack of inclusion because you cannot deal with a particular group of people without the other group. Everyone has to form a part of this agreement. So to avoid conflict and to ensure that forest management goes on without arising issues, community need to be considered because they play a very important role. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mahawa. And I'm excited to hear more about the approaches that you and your organization use to get many people from different generations involved. I would like to quickly ask Fakunle if he has anything to add in terms of how conflict and peace relate to his work.
Yes, thank you. Forest and forestry, they are very important and related to agriculture. And that is why we have agroforestry. One of the things we've noticed is that the role of forest in human survival is so enormous that the declining of it has contributed to the existing challenge of environment that the whole world is facing. As you may be aware, we know forestry helps in underground water regulation. Because of the roots of these heavy trees, it helps the soil to hold together and prevent all kinds of erosion and environmental degradation. So because of this, we as agricultural economists, we have seen that we cannot actually have a successful project without incorporating forestry into our activities. For example, cocoa troboma is one of the major crops from tropical major producers. But we discovered that over the year, Nigerian cocoa industry keep declining at a very fast rate. Nigeria was leading, one of the world leaders in cocoa production, but now Nigeria is far back behind. Why? This is because the environment has declined. Most of these trees got old, they were not maintained, and then the economic value has to go down. Over the years, this has led to uncomfortable livelihood for people that are engaged in it, and then led to environment conflict and different kind of problem. So another aspect of forestry is that wildlife. Forests help to provide to conserve the wildlife biodiversity. Breaking down of this has led to different problems and conflict in not only in forestry community, but also in the whole nation. Some of these wildlife are being harvested illegally. One of the reasons the United Nations tried to protect them by putting laws in place, but we found out that nations, countries are not implementing this law, and illegal trading and killing of this precious animal keep going on, and which is harming human beings. And sometimes people tried to affect these animals in an informal way by setting a whole farm or a bush or a forest into fire, which we call bush burning, in the hope that this animal will rush out, then they will catch them and use them for business. This led to environmental breakdown and loss of livelihood and displacement of people in their location. So forestry is very related to our work, and that is why we are using Agri to restore what has been lost and to prevent further breakdown of forest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pakune. That's it's really fascinating to hear from your perspective as an economist and working in agriculture, how important forests are for even those types of projects that are specifically focused on livelihoods. How important forests are for those. It's really important. Our next question is now hopefully going to get into reflecting on what has been working well or what the approaches and frameworks have been that our discussants use in their work. I'm hoping that we get to hear from a diversity of approaches, and I also encourage you all to share in the chat if you would like, if you have any interesting methodologies to share for this group. And I do see that we have two great questions. We'll try and work those in the next couple of minutes. But again, just to hear about the key frameworks or tools or approaches, or even kinds of knowledge that are used in your work, I'd love to hear some strengths and some challenges. So maybe we can start off with Mahawa.
Yes, thank you. One of the methods we use in our institution is that we have discussion like town hall meeting, stakeholder engagement with the local leadership. Like for example, we did a recent awareness program on forest management in Fonjama, in a community called Kozume. It's a small area, but then the community is a forested community. They have a population of 208 people. But then in that area, we realized that some people have access to land because their forefathers handed over to them. And in other areas, the land is for everyone to use. So in that, how can we reconcile the fact that a particular group owns this place because it was passed on to them by their forefather, and other people believe that it's a government land and they need to have access to it. So have this meeting, cautioning them and letting them know that no matter who passes it on to you, the forest is for everybody, because all of the people, their livelihood depends on it. Part of the forest they farm there, and part of the forest they use to plant palm, and part of it they use to use for hunting, and they use it for a whole lot of things. So if you know how beneficial it is to you, you will be considerate in how you use the forest. Because one of our participants told us that there came a time he wanted to burn a part of the forest because he believes that the forest is for his forefather and he has all right to use it. But then sadly for him, when he put up a fire there, it spread to the other area. The entire forest cover got burned. And then he felt really, really bad. It wasn't intentional, but he never had control over it. So these things becomes a problem over time. If you don't have information, access to how to go about using the forest, it becomes an issue. So our duty now is to educate them on what to do and what not to do. We carry on more awareness. We have training workshop, and we even introduce the permaculture method, where you can be able to use a particular land over a longer period instead of shifting cultivation. Because shifting cultivation and charcoal production are two important factors that lead to deforestation in Liberia. So we discourage the cutting down of trees because we know how important trees are to us in that of the environment. So we have stakeholder meetings, meetings of women group, meetings of farmer groups, because this meeting helps a lot in shaping their mindset when it comes to conservation. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Mahawa. And now let's see if Andiko can share a little bit about those conflict resolution methods or frameworks that are used in his work and anything else, of course.
Okay, thank you. I already explained little bit about the common strategy. And that moment, I would like to share the experience about ADR, ya, alternative dispute resolution in forestry area. Nah, from my experience and reflection, the actor doing the ADR in the tenure conflict lost his memory about the actor of conflict. The actor of conflict is human, but we talking about the technique. Yeah, we so long time we talking about the technique of conflict resolution. From that, we got the new problem. Not easy to bring the conflict parties to the table of mediation of negotiation, because within the conflict, the community have the big emotion, like hungry for some many moment, yeah, the bad moment in the relation of within the some conflict in forestry. From this situation, I try to develop the new methodology. We call that with the facilitation of conflict. What is the facilitation of conflict? This is the part of ADR, but not much people working with this idea, because not easy to facilitate the human in this conflict. Nah, from this situation, we make some training, yeah, as a media of facilitation of conflict. We invite the parties from this conflict together in the same room, but the methodology, we using the methodology of training of conflict resolution. But in this same moment, we try the methodology to conflict analysis, yeah, the true conflict. We bring the true conflict among parties, but the parties try to make analysis and directly negotiation under the training process. From my experience, in that moment, the parties try to resolve his emotion and try to broken the gap of communication, because the gap of communication is the main point of conflict. Now, after the gap of communication already broken in among parties, the parties will be discuss about his case together. If some parties not agree about this idea, the facilitator will be talking with the parties. This is only training. This is the strategy to manage his emotion. And similar time, we try to make some process of de-escalation the conflict. And similar time, the soft negotiation already start among the parties. And after the methodology, the parties will be get to, yeah, the analysis of his conflict, or including what is the indicative process and output of conflict resolution among the parties. The second, the parties get the good condition, like emotion, communication, good communication, effective communication, some kind of like that, yeah, to develop the formal negotiation or develop the formal mediation. And the other side, we try to develop the methodology to resolve of conflict, to facilitate the conflict based on the landscape, because so many conflict in a small conflict in the ground. We need to define some key connection among parties in the same landscape. For example, I try to resolve the human conflict and wildlife conflict, including the tenorial conflict in some area in Jambi. We define the connection among parties here. We should protect the elephant. Now, in the facilitation process, the parties agree to protect the elephant, even he has different interests about the land. Yeah, and after this process, the parties will be discussed for himself. Yeah, directly talking about the land conflict, because among parties already agree, even we have the tenorial conflict, we should resolve to protect the elephant. Elephant, the main key in this landscape. This is two methodology I try to develop and try the facilitation conflict among human, and try to develop the methodology of landscape-based conflict resolution, including the wildlife conflict. Thank you.
Really interesting, Andiko. I'm sure our audience would be interested to see links if you have resources or any written products, even if they're not in English. Thank you so much for sharing those two approaches. And we are now getting close. We're going to hear from Facunle a bit about the frameworks or tools. And I do want to say, I see a question in the chat about gender. And I know Facunle specifically has mentioned working on women's livelihood issues. I don't know if that was in your past work, Facunle, or if it's related to what you're doing now. But just to all of our panelists, keep that in mind when you respond to the next couple of questions, and we'll come back to it at the end. Go ahead, Facunle.
Thank you very much. Yes, the method that we are using here starts with community strengthening. Community strengthening is in the sense that the people that are affected by forest and environmental degradation, as well as the conflicts matter relating to it, we need to strengthen them. One, let them understand what is at stake if the situation continues. And two, how can they come out of the challenges that they find themselves? So we make use of, number one, advocacy. We discovered that protests in this context may not give us needed expected results. So we have to develop a concept of advocacy. Number one, train these people on how they can advocate for their needs, the challenges that they are facing. How can they identify these specific challenges and communicate it to whosoever that is needed to provide the solution? For instance, decision makers, the government. How can they negotiate with the government in such a way that government will be able to listen to them? We have to strengthen key actors in the communities in this area. Then we put them through on negotiation. negotiation with private investors, either indigenous investors or foreign investors come to the country. They usually be a forested area where they can have large expanse of land. Before, these people come and have discussion with some group of people, give money, and they have their way, leaving the environment degraded, the forest degraded, and then conflict arises. So how can this community be able to know who investors that is coming to contribute positively to them rather than exploiting from them? So we have to train them, build their capacity on negotiation. Now, we also use conservation method, conservation approaches. The land, the forest has gone, the environment is degraded. What can be done to preserve and conserve the existing one or restore the one that is lost? For example, shade tree is grown in tropical parts of the world, and tropical part of Africa contributes largest number of shade tree in the whole world. To grow a tree, one of these trees, it takes 25 years for it to grow and mature and start yielding fruit. It is the seed that they use to produce shea butter that is used in cosmetic industry all over the world. But because of lack of knowledge and low level, people begin to cut this in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Benin, in Togo. After strengthening the community, we need to teach them the importance of you need to plant this, you need to plant it so that the future generation can be able. Then, in engaging the private sector,
Fakunde, can you wait one moment? I'm so sorry.
Okay,
we're losing audio a little bit, so just want to wait for it to catch up, and then we can start again, hopefully. You were talking about the fact that people cut trees down because they're unaware, maybe, or the capacity or technical knowledge may be lacking about the time that is required for them to grow and start producing fruit.
Okay.
Can you start there again? Hopefully the audio will work.
Okay, I said shea tree is one of the important tree that grows in tropical parts of the world. Nigeria, West African country, Nigeria, Ghana, Benin, Togo, we are very blessed with it. And it's used by cosmetic industry globally, Asia, Europe, and the rest. So they have to come. But because of low awareness level, low knowledge of the importance of this tree, and poor economic livelihood, people begin to cut this tree indiscriminately, bearing the tree to grow and begin to train them not to cut it. So this approach has been helping a lot. That is private sector. Another approach that we use for decision maker is this: policy dialogue. Policy dialogue. Decision makers, they are used to top-bottom approach, whereby they know what they want to do without consulting the people that is mostly affected, who are the actors in this. So we need to dialogue with the government to see how they can work with the community that has been strengthening and involve participation. Like someone has a question that how can we do explain community participation. Community participation is a process whereby actors affected by environmental degradation and conflict are involved in policy process, in decision making that affect their life. So we do this through policy dialogue. After we have strengthened the community of private sector, the actors, then we engage the government to see the need of what they need to do and bring the two of them together on a roundtable discussion. The community actors will be able to voice their mind, not in a protest or in an angry form, but the need that they need because they have been trained, their capacity have been built. Then decision maker will be able to listen to them, first-hand information, and not what someone is telling them. And then decision policy process will be carried in such a way that actors are involved. We use a policy brief for this. After we have identified and engaged the private sector, we come up with some policy brief, present it to the government. When they see it, then they see the need of coming together. And this has been helping a lot. Some, as regard roles of men and women in our activities, we know that there are some roles that are gender sensitive in such a way that the hard part of some activities involve men that have big muscle to handle it, while some involve less strenuous but mental and emotional part. So we make sure that women are included in all our activities. For instance, in this discussion and dialogue, women representative, women youth, women in agriculture, women in forestry, they will be represented in the discussion so that they have women, they know what it takes, how it affects them, looking at that gender lens, and then it will help to be able to capture their work. So because of our time, these are the ways that, these are the framework that we have been using. And we have to use a framework that is need specific. Sometimes when we get to the field, community and people group, we discover that the existing framework we are using may not really work. So we have to find out, do need assessment and build the framework to address their need. Thank you.
Amazing. We've heard like some really fascinating approaches. And I think one thing I find interesting is the responsiveness to local interests and needs and what would resonate actually with the communities and landscapes that you all work with, instead of making assumptions coming from elsewhere and thinking that we're in the place to solve a problem that may be very deep-seated, right? Thank you so much to all of you for sharing that. We're actually hearing a lot of detail and we're only here with half an hour left. We do have a couple questions left to our discussants that are coming from the forest interest group, but I want to make sure that we'll have time to hear from the audience as well. So I'm going to ask our discussants to be a little bit more brief, if possible, with their answers, even though these are also big questions. So one of our questions was for us, who are working as practitioners or as in the policy sphere or as researchers, what is some, kind of capacity, knowledge, what additional, research needs to be done in order for us to kind of better respond to conflict dynamics while working on forest issues. And you're welcome to reflect on your own experiences or more broadly. And, that's kind of about needs and a needs gap. At the same time, I ask our discussants to also share with us a little bit about what they perceive to be the greatest opportunities in the forest conflict peace connection or nexus, right? So we'll talk about gaps and then hopefully opportunities. I will turn it over to Mahawa, hopefully, to share her thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. In forest management, further research is very, very necessary because deforestation has proven to be a very reliable predator of conflict and violence in some of the areas. So it will be very, very interesting to see more research on the effects of reforestation on community peace and conflict behavior. Because with that, people will get to understand and see the need to reconcile between their conflict and forest management. So more research and the availability of data is cardinal, because sometimes we find that, like for in Liberia, we don't have a lot of research going on in that area. So now if scientists and experts decide to dive in more into conducting research on these issues of conflict in forest management, it will be very, very interesting. So that's what I would say.
Thanks, Mahawa. And would you like to also share with us some thoughts on opportunities or anything that seems promising for the near future?
Yes, with access to knowledge, there will be a lot of opportunities, a lot of effort, a lot of progress in managing our forests, because having access to opportunities help a lot, and also public participation in forest management. They will have inclusion, or people from all walks of life have to form a part of it, and we'll have forest harvesting practices. There's something we consider as selective logging. Like sometimes people will say, I have to harvest my forest product because my family depends on it. But then we also tell them to be selective in how to go about it, because you have to consider the next generation, and we have to incorporate proper management measures so that everyone can have access. And we also need plan on how to manage forest resources. With this plan put into place, there will be a huge progress on how to conserve forest resources and reconcile it with peace building.
Thank you so much. Awesome, Mahawa. And of course, I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more from you when we start looking at the questions that are coming in the chat. So now I'll turn over this question to Andiko, again, looking for thoughts on gaps or research or experience needed, and then also some opportunities. And we'll keep this response a little bit shorter to make sure and get to the ones from the audience.
Thank you. I have interest about the sensitive conflict issue. Maybe a few years ago, I met with the idea about how to manage the national park from through the implementation of sensitive conflict. Nah, this idea not yet established in Indonesia, including Asia, I think. We should develop the methodology, research, how about talking about maybe standard and regulation, some kind of like that, how to implement to change the management of forest in forestry country through the sensitive conflict. Why? Because not enough capacity to manage many conflict after the management of forestry done. We should develop the standard methodology before the conflict coming. Now, this is my idea, how to mainstreaming the idea about sensitive conflict in forestry and natural resource management around the world, including the Indonesia, I think. Thank you.
That is definitely a big task, Andiko, but a really great place for us to have, I hope, future conversations to hear maybe some good practices from organizations or practitioners around the world. Hopefully we'll follow up on that, if not today, another time. So a great idea. And now we'll turn to Facunle to hear a bit about gaps and then also opportunities.
Thank you. Using Nigeria as a case study, the structure is already there, but they are not functioning. For instance, the Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria covers the whole disease geopolitical zone, and the role is everything to manage forest and forestry, everything related to forest and the environment. But what are they doing? The resources to engage the researchers there is not there. Those that are there, what they are churning out is not being used. So it's like a bulldog without teeth. The structure is there. So the gap is that institute needs to be restored. And this is similar in some other African countries. So this has to be addressed. And also, researchers are doing a lot, especially as related to forest and environment, but the information is not getting out across to the right people. If the public decision maker are not using the research from the research institute and schools, others are working, who will use it? Private sector that will have make the best use of this research information are not having access to them. Some researches that I've done that I put online there, sometimes someone somewhere in one part of the world will just give me a call. They saw this, they do it, can you explain to us? If more of such researches are going out and people have access to it, even without waiting for the government to help them, private will make the best use of it too. There are enormous opportunities. Now, climate change, climate-related issue is a global agenda. This is an enormous opportunity that any nation can tap into to address the existing challenges. And as more young people are going into environmental related issues to provide innovative solutions to it. So there are opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fakunle. It's a great mention of the role of youth and innovation and hopefully inspiring action. Thank you all for your very succinct, again, remarks on some gaps and also opportunities. I've made a note of all of these, and we know this is recorded. So hopefully we can continue some of those conversations or trains of thought in the near future. So I think right now I'd like to make sure we have time to address some of the questions in the chat. Thank you so much for submitting those. And then in the meantime, I'm also going to share my screen. And hopefully you all in the audience can contribute some ideas about next steps or a vision for this field. But first, I want to make sure to verbally ask the questions that we have here. So I see a question for Fakunle. Could you expand a little bit on how you carry out the dialogue with the governments and how you convince the community to get involved? So if you want to just share a little bit about that process, it would be great. And just let me ask the second question as well, so that maybe the next person can also be ready. I would also like to see if Andiko might be interested in responding to an earlier question about FPIC. I don't know if you've ever worked with big international brands, Andiko, or the private sector otherwise, but if you have any comments on FPIC from your perspective as a lawyer, we would really appreciate the insights. So we'll start with Fakunle and then move to Andiko, please.
Thank you so much. How we carry out dialogue with the government and engage the community. The first thing is to start with the community, because they are the one that is affected by the challenges. And if they don't see into what we want to do, we may not have the result that we expect. So the first thing, as I explained earlier, is that we meet with the community people. We organize the key leaders, decision makers in the community, the elders, the religious leaders, the youth leaders, the women leaders, the market leaders, based on the structures of that community or a state. Now, having organized them, we try and showcase do not have information, but we want to hear from them. And we hear the challenges. What do they think can be the way out? We have a community stakeholders meeting. We have to engage them on several occasions for them to see into what we are doing, so that their mind can align with us on what we want to do to help them out of the situation. After we have agreed with them, they have bought into the agenda, what we want to do, then we let them know that we are going to the decision makers that can solve that problem for them in a sustainable way. Because we have to do it in such a way that when we are no more there, they can continue to get the ball rolling. So we meet the decision maker relating to that issue in that location, at either at state level or at federal level, and sell our idea to them and let them know that we have engaged the community and the private sector. Then after the leader. Sometimes it takes a lot of time to convince decision maker because they will be on defensive side. Do you think we don't know
Fakunle, we may need to go back a couple of seconds. The audio cut out again.
Where are you coming from? But after some trying to bridge the gap. Okay, can you hear me now? Hello?
Hi,
Hello, hear me now?
we can hear you again. Can you go back just a little bit? We lost a little audio. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So after we engage the decision makers for them to buy into what we are into the solution we are bringing on board. Decision makers sometimes may be defensive. They may not want to be cooperate. They may not want to cooperate with our idea. But due to after some resilience, discussion, persuasion, negotiation, dialogue, they will see that we are actually intermediary providing solution to the existing gap between them and the people they are leading. When this is achieved, we have the buy-in from the community, the private sector, we have the buy-in from the government. Then we now organize a stakeholders meeting. A stakeholders meeting whereby the decision maker comes, the private community actors or actors in the value chain, they comes, they meet, and then we do the facilitation. The decision maker is able to hear firsthand from the community and community is able to hear firsthand. And from there, we can develop a process to address the issue. Thank you.
Great to hear more about the ins and outs, Fakunle. I'm about to share my screen for you all, but Andiko will be responding to the question about FPIC, I believe. Go ahead, Fakunle. Andiko, I'm so sorry. I'm reading the names all together. And then Mahawa will also address the question about gender, but go ahead, Andiko.
Okay, I will talking about FPIC, yeah. And greeting from Indonesia, and how about Paris? No, I went to Paris a few years ago with my family, yeah. Okay, FPIC in international community, there is two model of FPIC. The World Bank, the really FPIC from UN, yeah, talking about the consent, but the World Bank talking about the consultation. This is the big debate about the FPIC, yeah. If we're talking the big brand still doing activity among this situation, consultation or consent, because not easy to get the consent from the community. So many process, yeah. But if the big brand only get the only doing the consultation, the big brand will be get the conflict. This is the real situation. What is the challenge of FPIC? The one challenge of FPIC, how to get the representation of community. This is the challenge, yeah. And within the community, this is related with the question about the woman, yeah. How to get the voice from woman, because in the community there is a few like customary about the position of women, yeah. If we go to the field, maybe we cannot bring the women to the formal meeting. The FPIC person should go to like the special area for women, like you should talking in the cooking or time, some time of like that, yeah. And including how to get the voice from the young men and vulnerability people. This is the still debate in the ground. Many brands working in Indonesia from the Paris, there is some big brand working in the rubber plantation. The name is Michelin. Michelin get the rubber from Indonesia directly, and many community live in the subsidiary company in the ground. Yeah, there is a tribal people, farmer people, indigenous people already exist before the company coming to his location. Now the EnPAx process still important in this area, because how to capture the daily process, daily process and daily industry in the ground. Yeah. Now many big brand already got some problem about the EnPAx process in Indonesia. For example, some company get some suspension from the roundtable sustainable palm oil in international, because he doesn't have enough evidence about the EnPAx process. Nah, EnPAx until now, only EnPAx process facilitate the like a bridge, among the company and community in the ground. But every time we need to ensure the issue of EnPAx, like representation, consent or consultation, and what is the record, the process, the whole process of FPIC. At least many standard from international, including the like FAO, FAO already released the standard of EnPAx in the land-based business around the world. Now you can taking the document in online in Google. You can discuss about that. Thank you.
Thanks for the overview and also some specific insights into how it's working or not in Indonesia. Andiko, appreciate that.
Okay.
We had a follow-up question for Mahawa, actually, to hear about gender and the work that Mahawa and her organization does. So we'd love to know if you can share with us a little bit about the role of women, the importance of women, just anything that you have to share with us.
All right, thank you, Laura. Well, as we know, the impact of deforestation is clear now, and there has been a complete shift in Liberia's climate. Farmers, women farmers, they are already seeing the impact, and their community is being affected greatly. So, like, we have smaller streams, smaller water bodies around the forested area. They have all dried up due to loss of forest cover, and now these women have to walk long distances to get the water. So you will find some NGO coming in to install pump in the middle of that village, but then women wouldn't have time to discuss issues that are affecting them, because when you go into a stream or river to get water, they will have the opportunity to discuss issues affecting them, affecting their families, and how they can resolve these issues. So in our program, we have women groups in all of the towns working. Like our nursery project. These women here, this project, they help in the planting process because they know how important these trees are. Like, for example, we have a midwife in one of the federation. Let me explain that she doesn't have access to some of the medicines she uses for pregnant women because the trees have been cut down. So she encouraged a fellow woman to not cut a particular tree because of the medicinal benefits and the traditional value attached to these trees. So the women, they have a very important role to play. So with knowledge, training, and awareness on how they can manage their own forest, will help a lot in making a difference. So we know that women play a very important role in building peace, because through sorry about that, there's a car passing. Because through forest conservation, they will be able to have the time for themselves to get away from or maybe community pressure so that they can discuss issues affecting them. So women are very important aspect of our work. We consider them a whole lot because they, even in the environmental movement, women have been playing important roles in environmental conservation. So they are key. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mahawa. That's really interesting to hear all of those details for. I actually see that we have a question from very early on about recovering forests where it looks like plantations might have previously been. I was wondering if any of our panelists have experience with like forest recovery or restoration. And then I see we have a question from Casimiro. So does anyone have any experience with the forest recovery, restoration in degraded areas that they'd like to share? And if not, we can move to the next question.
Well, I am just delighted to hear from Andiko with regards to their experience in Indonesia. Actually, we have around 20 years, so 2 decades of experience in forest management involving conflict resolution, such as the conflict in the utilization of resources. Others do not want to utilize resources like timber cutting, especially those so-called environmentally conscious groups, no? And of course, there is conflict because people want to use timber for housing, and the government will have to regulate this. There are other opponents, and there are, of course, groups that promote timber cutting because of the need. We need, the Philippines needs over 500,000 cubic meter of timber per year. And so you have to address that. So those are conflicts that are happening with regards to resource utilization. Now, as far as land conflict is concerned, we have similar experience with Andiko because before, back in the 90s, we also have problem on ancestral domain. And I was privileged to be the team leader on the ground to craft the first ancestral domain management in the Philippines that became a model for the 2 million hectares of ancestral land in the Philippines. And because of that, that was actually a product of USAID assistance to grant money from the American people, that we were able to craft our own Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act. And because of that, long story short, we now have this system of recognizing Indigenous people. We now have a system for resolving land conflicts. And maybe time is not enough to share all these things with you. But since we are involved in the forest interest group, I have that willingness to share this to our group if you will allow. I think that's all, Nora. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And yes, we're happy to see some familiar faces and names from the Forest Interest Group. We are now arriving towards the end of our roundtable today. I want to make sure that if Andiko, Mahawa, or Fakunle have any additional comments, to go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for Mr. Olivida. I still remember and miss the Makati, Cagayan de Oro. I went to Philippines many moments to learn much, yeah, about indigenous people, about the ancestral land years ago. Yeah, I agree about that. But Indonesia so slowly process. Yeah, until now, not easy to get the right to timber for community. But easy to get the right for timber if the community using the business entity. Yeah. Not easy for indigenous people, as the indigenous people, to get the right of timber. Indonesian law still talking about indigenous people only subsystem live, yeah, if the indigenous people want to get some profit about his business, he should change the legal entity about his business entity. Now, this is the weakness in Indonesia now. My government still try to release the forest for community, but not easy to enter the business models. Yeah, this is the challenge in Indonesia now. Thank you for your experience. I waiting you in the association soon.
Wow, thank you all so much also for the really rich questions. I'm seeing some responses slowly come into our shared board here through the Mentimeter. You're welcome to keep adding, including after this session. I'll keep it open for just a little bit. I really want to take a moment and just reflect quickly on how many amazing stories of, I don't know if it's success in the formal sense, but of like opportunities and really innovative ways of engaging communities of, and such diverse landscapes, communities who have very different contexts as well, by using forests or forest management as a way for building livelihoods and, consequently peace. I also love the innovative approach of using capacity building on conflict resolution to start gears working in the minds of communities and other stakeholders that have been involved in kinds of conflict, for a long time as well, that Andiko shared with us. So we've heard a lot of great things, and I know that we could probably have like 50 more conversations based on the ideas that were shared today. We encourage you all, though, to stay in touch about all of these topics. One easy thing to do would be to get involved with a forest interest group, especially if you're already an Environmental Peacebuilding Association member. But if you're not, I think maybe Bernd has already shared his email in the chat. You can reach out and hopefully, learn a little bit more about what that might entail. Thank you so much, Mahawa, Andiko, and Fakunle. Another round of applause we can all do virtually. Thank you for sharing your experiences and insights, and of course to our active audience members who have contributed great questions. Before we sign off for today, I do want to remind you all about a couple of upcoming, events of note. The first thing to say is just to take a look again at the agenda for the rest of the conference. It's obviously rich and overwhelming, but there is really something for everyone. So please take a look again. And then the other thing I would say is to be sure and register if you can and participate in the upcoming awards ceremony for the Environmental Peacebuilding Awards this year. You can register at the Zoom link that I just added in the chat. Finally, just want to say thank you so much to our technical experts who helped us make this session possible. And again, to all of you for making time. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a nice rest of the day or evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Very good.